So, yesterday I had a viewer make a comment and ask me about how me and my husband were able to build trust and how we actually manage our finances. And I really thought long and hard about that. And so today, let's talk about it. So, the first thing we do is we really have open communication. I know a lot of people say that, but we met later in life. So we didn't meet in our 20s. We were in our early 30s when we met. And he already had his finances established. He was not a spender per se. He was more of a natural saver, and I'm the spender in the relationship. So between the two of us, you have a spender and a saver. And I had very good background in money management. I mean, I spoke on that before in a video. So, what was modeled for me at a young age was good money management. And I think my feelings of not being able, coming from a very big family and not being able to afford things and staying back when it came to school trips and not having all the, not having all the Christmas presents that other peers that I perceived had made me much more of a spender when it came to initially managing my money and moving out. When I first lived at home and I was first working, I started working when I was 15. And so I spent money. I only got a quarter of my paycheck. And so I was well used to living on just a quarter of my paycheck. But then, of course, once I started paying the bills and living on my full paycheck, my rent was fit into what I actually gave my parents for rent. So it was pretty easy for me to move out on my own. And then, of course, when we combined our finances and I was in the process of starting to pay off debt, I just didn't want to bring debt into our relationship. So we kept our accounts that we both had separate. And we then created a joint account when we got together. And both of our paychecks, majority of it would go into the joint account. And at first, I think we were probably earning. I earned a little bit more than he did when we added joint accounts. But I was the spender in the relationship more so, and I had the well, actually, when we got married, the debt was already paid off. The wedding was paid off, but I I definitely was the one who had the debt. He had no debt. He had help from his parents to pay for school. He bought his car outright. So again, he wasn't a big spender, and truthfully, to this day, that's carried on. He tends to spend more on um, going out for meals, and he buys a lot of vitamins and just things that he actually needs to replace. He doesn't buy things. So that's kind of a blessing. And I think bringing that into the relationship of how he's very content with what he has was another model and example for me to have a level of contentness with what we have. And I think that's where our modest lifestyle came from. So again, we brought our finances together, but we kept our separate accounts. And one reason that we did this, I know a lot of people combine everything, and one reason we did this is I never wanted us to fight or argue about money. And that we definitely didn't. We both got spending money. Early on, it was less, but we both got our own spending money. So I took my paycheck, and I had done this even early on, and I had my paycheck divided into three. I had a portion of my check went automatically into an account that was steered for savings. Another portion of my check went into an account that was just purely for spending, and a portion of the bulk of my check went into pay bills. And of course, I had my 401k come out, money of my contributions come out before any of that. The way that I perceived it is, hey, if I can pay money for taxes and I can pay all those things, and then I'm putting into my 401k, it's really the government putting the taxes in. And so when it came to his money, The way we worked it out is we left his check in with the one going to his one account. And then I would just simply move an amount out for bills. And he would get more of money than I would. It's because he was using primarily the cash for us. So anytime we would go out, he would use cash to pay for restaurants or for coffee or things that we did. Except when it came to my own spending money, he didn't buy anything for me when it came to my spending money. When we bought each other gifts, we used our own spending money. And then if his spending account would go too high, I think I set the limit because he needed to feel this level of safety that he would have no more than 3,000 in his account. And because he wasn't a big spender, the amount that he thought he needed to spend would constantly always go over that amount. And so once it did, I would just move it over. And so one of the first things we did is have real communication on what we both needed to be comfortable. I was fine with just having the amount that it would be transferred from my check to be my spending money because I knew if I gave myself more, I would just spend it. Whereas he was quite the opposite. He wouldn't. We tracked our expenses, and we would have budget talks. We would have a lot of goal setting for things we want. And early on, it was for certain things for saving for a down payment. And at the time, we would put money into CDs and do ladder CDs. So we opened up, ING at the time, which was giving high CD rates. And then we thought we'd get to the point because we were seeing at the time that we were getting interest because it were really high CDs, and we had saved quite a bit of money doing it this way. And we were getting close to $600 a month, I remember at the time, in interest because I had paid off my student loans. We had paid off the wedding before we had it. And so we got married in 2005. And in 2007, I think I was convinced at the time that it was probably a good idea to just buy our home outright. And of course, we didn't end up doing that. We ended up getting a mortgage because we were out and about and we happened to see an open house and we loved the apartment. And it was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and it's exactly where we are today. And so that's how we settled and we got our apartment. And that took a big chunk of our money. I believe, trying to think if we might have put I think we took a loan out for the place we paid was $360 at the time, $360,000, and the loan was $288. So I think that means we put 72 down, if I'm doing the math right. So we put 72,000 down, and we kept the cash that we had, the remainder of the cash that we had, and we just used that as our emergency fund and for every other thing that we needed. And then we continued to live the same way, constantly, I would say, having talks about money, having goal setting, trying to reach certain amounts, discussions when it came to buying additional properties. That was an interest of mine more so than his. But he's always been very supported. I've been always supported as well. We feel like we're on the same team. It's a really good relationship. We have never fought about money. We have had disagreements on family member things where whether or not we should help, but not with regards to money. But that's a separate thing. And then we've had discussions and come to agreements when it comes to gift giving, because I tend to be overly generous and he tends to be more thoughtful. And so we have to come to a middle ground and make agreements on what to do in situations. And he tends to, sometimes I think in more ways, he's just fine with what I decide. He's always been very supportive, sees how our wealth has grown, contributes or gives me the credit and the accolades for what we've done. But I've made a lot of mistakes, and so during the course of the time, there's been mistakes that I have made with money, including turning over one of our investment accounts to be managed by someone else and buy options. And I lost a lot of money in 1 month doing that. And he at the time was like, well, you know what? We made that money. We're going to be fine. And completely supportive. So we have never fought about money. We talk about goals. We talk about our net worth, and we'll have conversations. He has access to all our accounts. There is nothing hidden because you could see all our social security numbers. I guess would be linked up with Mint. You can see if there's anything out there for yourself. So, like for instance, in Credit Karma, I see my credit score. I would be able to see if there was any outstanding credit cards that potentially somebody opened on behalf of me, or at least I believe I would be able to see that because it affects your credit score when someone does something like that. I do have, I never open links. And I'm pretty careful with making sure that we don't use our phones for things. God forbid our phones were ever hacked. So there is that. We're very careful. He gets to see everything. I show him all the numbers, and we have regular discussions. Early on, we were budgeting for things, and we had discussions. And it was always me who wanted to raise our spending allowances, as you would kind of say. But he's always just really just bought himself things to replace things in the house. So he tends to be more the grocery shopper than I am because he buys just what we need, just what we use, replaces what we have, and he tends to be more in line with cash. And then anytime we use credit cards, it is he doesn't like paying credit card bills. So even though he has a credit card bill, it tends to be me when we do use a credit card, when he's running low on cash. And then we try to, even have conversations when it comes to spending money on vacations. What should we spend? And so we just talk, and we have very open communication when it comes to money. And this has helped us tremendously. We have never, ever spent more than we've earned. And that was probably a credit to me, but I think he naturally would have never spent his full paycheck. So there is that. Whereas without guardrails around myself, I know that I would. I mean, I even tend to have, I like to do things for entertainment, meaning like, which seems to go against everything personal finance. But whereas I don't mind going to the casino like once or twice a year and spending a little money to do that. That's not, yeah, and he will go along and be my little manager while I'm going and playing on the machines. But that to us, and we perceive it to be, fun money and stuff like that, But I tend to, you have to go with the thought process that you're going with money that you're going to lose. And thankfully, I've never gone to a point where I've spent more than we've budgeted. So, but I tend to be more of wanting to experience a little bit of everything, wanting to raise our budgets at time, because now I feel like we're at a point in our lives where we may never use all the money that we have set aside. So it is like sometimes a struggle to to get him to see that it's okay to spend a little bit more on a meal and to not worry about how much we're spending on certain things, because he tends to be more really conservative spender, whereas I have to keep myself in line and in check and on budget. Otherwise, if I give myself too much to spend in my account, I will spend it. So there is that. But yeah, fighting about money doesn't happen. It's open communication, it's goal setting, it's having regular discussions, It's working as a team, not being adversaries. It's, the trust is there. There's never a fear or worry about um, either him or I doing something on the side. It just isn't in his nature the way he spends. He loves to be able to buy things outright and not have a payment. And so I've had the experience and pleasure of being able to buy a car outright. I also not a big fan of having debt, so there is the the need on my end to want to pay things off. We are very thoughtful about what we do buy when it comes to big ticket items, so we'll always try to look for the best price. And yeah, we're in sync and in aligned. And we kept our finances as far as our own spending money separate, and have an account to manage our bills and have an account to manage our um, savings as well. And then our investments continue to be streamlined from the way I did initially. Anyway, those are some of my thoughts on how we did and
Maybe when you have to get out.
how to, I don't know if there's necessarily a wrong way, whether you should be combining, whether you should be syncing to one account. I do think that, the idea that we kept it separate and we had our own spending money allowed us to spend without worry, without concern, without having to answer to anyone, and not feel constricted. I've never felt constricted. I talked to him before I did this video, and I asked him questions on what his thoughts were, and he said, we always talked about things. We always continued to talk about things. When he had questions, he would come to me and I would answer them and I would show him. And yeah, and that's how we manage our money. And he doesn't even remember the budget I actually put him on because I didn't actually do a complete budget. I kept it at a specific amount that he would have in his account. So he would never feel like he couldn't go to the ATM when he needed to go to the ATM. So that's how we did our money. I I was on a strict budget for myself, and he had a little bit more lax, but he really did do more of the cash for the two of us, and it felt okay for me to work that way. Anyway, open discussion, have set goals for yourself, have regular check-ins. I constantly change the plans and the goals on what we are going to do with our money. But that's when I'm changing it, it's more like, okay, whether or not should we buy a property here, what we're saving for. But retirement, we've always been aligned. I increased his retirement early on, and because he wasn't putting in the maximum. And I think some of those things that I did early on to show him his own money growing and that he was going to the maximum was another area that also helped build up trust. And the fact that he could see at any time, has access to go in at any time. He knows my PIN, I know his PIN. Should he need to go to the ATM for me to take out cash from me. So that's how we did our money. I hope this video is helpful, and I will catch you on the next one.